If you're alive, you're a creative person. Elizabeth Gilbert. Welcome to Deep Dive Creatives, a podcast that promotes creativity. I'm David McGinness, host of Deep Dive Creatives. The mission of this podcast is to encourage the spirit of creativity. If you'd like to help me with that mission, please subscribe to this podcast. That helps promote the podcast, and if you click on the notification bell, that will let you know when the next episode is available. Also, there is an interactive menu in the episode description that allows you to jump to any of the topics discussed in this episode. You can also listen to this podcast on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. Meet Steve Hunt.
I very seldom sit down and produce nothing. I feel like I have to be producing something to make it worth my time.
Steve describes himself as the ultimate creative junkie. He is a painter, a woodworker, a writer, and an editor. Before Steve retired from the business world, he was the vice president of marketing for Corban University. Before that, he was the president of a company called the Adamson and Hunt Design Group. Growing up on a farm in a small town in Montana, Steve learned about the creative process by watching his father.
My dad had 2 acres of land, but he worked at a sawmill all day. So much of what he did, everything was his creativity. He built the farm from scratch, all the buildings, houses, and he sometimes adapted machinery. Nothing daunted him. If something needed to be done, in all the years I was at home, I never knew him to hire anybody else except once. He didn't spend a lot of time saying, this is what I'm doing and this is what you should do. He just did it. And kind of at an arm's length. So I learned by just watching and my own curiosity. I have an incredible curiosity, and it translates into then doing something about that, what I see, and learning from that.
One of Steve's first ventures into the creative expression was painting signs.
I started painting signs. That was the easiest thing. My neighbor wanted his mailbox painted, and I did that. And then he had a trucking company, and I started painting the doors on his trucks. From that, I went to basically working at a sign company, a grocery store, banners and all that. And then I put a sign out in front of my house and started painting signs for anybody that wanted. So when I got to college, that translated into sports banners. You know, when the other team would come in, we'd have banners up on the wall, go team go, and I started doing that. And the man who was in charge of the print press, Stan Floor, saw that and asked me to work in the print shop. And that process then really set my career. He was my mentor. He didn't have children, and I think he took me on as his son. And so he spent 9 years of his life pouring into me.
Steve also had a passion for the fine arts and devoted as much time as he could to painting and woodworking.
I really wanted to do fine art, but I couldn't make a living with a wife and kids. So I depended upon graphic design to make a living, and then in the evenings and weekends I'd choose what I wanted to do for painting and woodworking or whatever.
Over the years, Steve has expressed his creative abilities through paintings, building clocks, writing and illustrating a children's book, writing a novel, and designing and overseeing the construction of a clock tower. Also designing and overseeing the construction of a public memorial. As Steve unpacks his thoughts about creativity, it's my hope you will be challenged to continue or perhaps begin your own journey down the wild and untamed path of creativity. Let's dive in. So let's talk about how you define creativity.
My idea is that it's using my time and my resources to create something that is uniquely mine and a product. I know a lot of times guys would sit down and watch a football game for 4 hours, and I couldn't do it without working while I'm doing it. And I'm still that way. I very seldom sit down and produce nothing. I feel like I have to be producing something to make it worth my time. And so that seems to have been the role of my life and creativity.
Talk about your creative process.
Usually when I'm out and about, I see something that might be just an instant. I'll look down and see a tree or something, a sign or something that I like. And that oftentimes it inspires me to build on it. And so I do that, but usually what happens is somewhere between 4 and 6 in the morning is when my creative brain starts working. It's always been that way. So if I saw something the day before, it will come up and I'll begin to work on it and refine it, try to think of what I'd want to do with it. And that might take a couple days of thinking, and then I'll quick make a thumbnail sketch of it. Well, a thumbnail sketch is pretty safe because you don't have a lot of work to change if you want to build and change it. Once that thumbnail is done, then I'll make it somewhat larger, maybe 2 or 3 inches around. Thumbnails are maybe an inch around. And once I have that sort of blocked in, then I want to refine it. So then I'll trot down to the photocopy store and make a photocopy that might be 11 by 17. And in that process, then I work with tracing paper over the top of it, and I can change that a lot. And without getting distracted at what's there, I can redefine a line, move things, and expand things, reduce things. And then once I have that sketch done, then I will, if it's a painting, I will transfer that to a canvas. But I'm not the kind of painter that starts at one corner and paints it all the colors, all the detail right through. I'll just do a background, and then I'll start on one thing and then another, and develop it piece by piece.
Do you have a favorite part of the process?
Yeah, usually when I start something, I will get the sketch part done, particularly with woodworking. I'll do all of that, and then I'll draw a list of parts, make a list and measurements, get everything measured out, and then I'll cut those parts and begin the assembly. Once I get up to there, that's the most fun. It's getting all that stuff ready to go. When it gets to where it's assembled and kind of the finish work is coming, that's when it kind of stops. The fun is done, and now it's just finishing up and all that. So I really like the emotion that goes into seeing this thing come to life.
What are your sources of inspiration?
The sources of inspiration are limitless because it's never the same. I've made 225 clocks, and only one time did I duplicate it. Everything else is original. And that's because I always joke about the fact that I have a short attention span, but inspiration just comes from what I see and what I've done that day and want to try it. It's going back to the farm. I'd watch what my dad did. My dad actually built a stagecoach in his shop, and I watched him when I was 9 years old, step by step. And then, so I would tend to mimic everything, and so that's what I still do. I see even a car, a nice car that's painted cool, or I see, I'll come around a corner, and on the horizon there breaks a neat path or road that curves around, and it calls you to where it's going in the forest and stuff. So that inspires me. Most of my work in painting are rural farms, which is the way I grew up. So if I see a picture of a farm, or if I'm driving down the highway and I come upon a farm that's off in the distance, there's the barn, there's the trees, there's the mountain, and the setting is what inspires me. And oftentimes I'll move things around, but it's that initial response that is cemented in my brain, and I go from that.
How do you handle a creative effort that isn't working out?
If I don't have success in getting what I wanted, what I envisioned, it's kind of like a roadblock, and I just stop. I've tried before to adjust things, but if it just won't adjust, I have to conclude that it was a bad idea in the first place. So I'll either abandon it or set it aside. Sometimes I've set aside a painting for 5 and 6 years, and I'll dig through the inventory and then I can see something I want to do, or I can see how I can improve it. It's amazing what you learn over time, and I look at it and I say, I can't believe I did that. Or there are other times when I say, I can't believe I did that because I don't think I could do it better. So it's a start and stop. And sometimes I will go that route of seeing something during the day that answers the question I had about the problem that I had with that painting years before. And I'll dig it out, and then I have the answer and I can finish it. I'm a self-taught artist. So a lot of mistakes I've made would probably have been solved if I'd had an education. But on the other hand, if I'd had an education, I'm not sure that it would have helped in a lot of ways, because I don't stand still long enough to do something. And I did take a course from the Northwest artist David McGinness, and it was like a summer course in painting, and I learned a lot from that. And I realized that if I'd had that earlier, I would have saved a lot of grief, because you can learn something in 3 or 4 years in school that might take you 20 years if you're trying to second guess it yourself and learn from mistakes. But I don't have any regrets in that regard, because I wasn't driven to be a famous artist. I just did what I liked to do. As long as I was having fun and enjoying it, it didn't bother me that I had some learning to do. But usually your own learning, it happens more than you think. Like I've said, I pull out a painting that I'd done a few years earlier, and I look at it and I think two ways. Either it's really good and I don't think I could do that again, or it's really bad and why did I do it that way? Because I've learned over in the next few years what I did wrong. And interestingly enough, when I do the sketch and I begin to paint, probably 40% of what makes the painting success is things that I add from that on, the ideas that I have. Add a tree, add a car, add a house, add something else that makes it better. And a lot of times that's whimsy. So I tend to see things in a way kind of makes fun of my original idea, which is true of this stagecoach here. I'd been working on a freight wagon that's very detailed, very to scale, and I burned out, and and I saw a painting or it was a photograph of a crummy old stagecoach, and it just inspired me because it was all lumpy and out of proportion to everything else, and so I just decided to make one. So I did.
How do you deal with dry spells?
Oftentimes I'll hit a wall that I can't complete. There's 3 ways to go. I'll either try to correct it, what I'm on, if it is a farm scene and the foreground isn't working, even though I like the barn and the mountains, the foreground I can't get, and so I'll try to fix it. If it's not working, then I'll try to change it. And if that's not working, then I just wait until I find something that I see in another painting or another scene, take a photograph of it, and it solves that problem. But that could be a week later, it could be 3 years later. So I don't try to force things. The worst thing I can do is force it, and then it's on the wall and it just keeps bugging you. Like I don't like that, it didn't work. So there are paintings that I've had finished, and 5 years later it hasn't sold, so I dig it out and I see what I want to do, and I totally paint out the sky, totally paint out the foreground and fix it.
Right.
So time is the great healer when it comes to a roadblock. But when it comes to woodworking, I've been known to carry my half-finished clock out to the garbage can and dump it in.
Do you have creative mentors?
When I went to college and I got a job at the college press, Stan Floor took me in sight unseen, other than some banners on the gym wall, taught me photography, taught me graphic photography, the plate making and the dark room, and then we had a letterpress, so I learned to set type, lead type. As the industry developed, it went from lead typesetting to photo typesetting, where you had a strip of paper that you exposed a letter at a time. You advance the tape, open the lid, and turn on the light, and then the next letter. So a headline might take you 15 minutes if it was a long headline to do it. So from that, then we went, and the typesetting was all, the text was all done on a typewriter. Then it went to Selectric, which was a little bit more advanced than a typewriter. So all those stages, Stan walked me through for 9 years. So it was hard for me when I left, because he had invested so much in me, and I was kind of like, see you later. But he knew that, it was time for me to go in terms of my own interests. So he was an incredible mentor that way. He liked to build ships. He had about a 3-foot model of a ship that he worked on probably 4 or 5 years, and that inspired me too to build probably my clocks, because the only reason I went into clockmaking was because my dad had done that. He made clocks, but he was the traditional kind of clockmaker, and I was a wacky one. I didn't like tradition, and I just wanted to do my own thing. So I would make a clock that had little birds on it that were hoeing their garden and outside their little birdhouse, and things like that. That was me, not him. And so that's what I did. So that when Stan made ships, that was also very refined, very perfect. And I admired that, but I knew I couldn't do it. I tried a few times, and it looked like a kindergartner. So I just would adjust to what I could do.
What is your creative philosophy?
My philosophy with creativity is intertwined with my spiritual life. As I graduated from college, I was trying to decide if I would go in the ministry or do artwork, and as it turned out, I was given the opportunity to decide, and it was very clear that I should stay at the college and do my artwork. So since that time, whenever I'd think about doing fine art full-time, I would think about where that leads, what the steps were, and where I would be. And it left me empty. I've always felt like there needs to be a purpose for what I'm doing. And so that's part of the reason I stayed at the college for 37 years, because I felt like I was contributing to the ministry of the college and having fun too, doing my artwork. So that was the perfect balance for me.
Do you have creativity goals?
I retired in 2017, and I had done everything I wanted to do, but yet I wanted to do more fine art because it was always balanced between graphic design and art because I was making a living. But once I retired, then I sort of the first 3 months I went on steroids. I was up at 5:30 in the morning and working until the evening because I wanted so many things I wanted to do that I'd not been able to do. But then I slowed down, and at that time I had an outlet for my work. That was, I think, a very contributing factor to what I did was I had some place to put the artwork besides the garage. So I wanted to, when I made my first clocks, I took it down to art galleries, and they'd say, "Oh no, that's a clock. That needs to go in a clock store." And so I'd take it to the clock people, and they'd say, "Well, that's kind of artsy. I think you'd be better off in a gallery." And it was just went back and forth. And finally, one time, I went to Sisters, Oregon, and there's a guy there that I was introduced to, and he has a clock shop there, Beecham's Clock Company. He and his wife had started it, had built it up, and he was a world-known clockmaker. He had all the machines to make the brass parts, the woodworking, everything he did from scratch. And he had the graciousness to say, "Yeah, I'll carry your work," which there was no comparison. But he gave me a corner of the store, and I was able to sell there. And I sold over 200 clocks there over 20 years. And then same with painting. I've been in galleries. I've been in galleries in Salem. I went to Santa Fe on my 60th birthday, and a guy there I hit it up with, and he agreed to carry my work. And it was a kind of deal where he didn't take a commission. He basically rented wall space. So I rented wall space for 3 months in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I was so proud of that, but I never sold anything. But in the end, and I'm saying this for people who think that all artists are rich, it cost me $600 to ship that stuff down there and bring it back home in 3 months, and I never made a dime, So there is reality to art. And oftentimes I'd see other artists in Salem, either graphic design or fine art, and I'd be jealous because they seemed to be doing so well, and they weren't working except just working on their art. Well, there's a reason for that usually, and if you dig a little deeper, you find out that their spouse has an excellent job with the state, and they're being supported by the state of Oregon. So there's always a reason why you shouldn't look at the other person and think that you should be able to do it the same way. And as people say in Hollywood, for every star there's 400 of them working in a restaurant, So my goals when I retired, then I made a lot of clocks and I sold a lot of clocks, but then now I'm 78, and your body doesn't respond the same way, nor does your brain. So I've tried painting, and painting I discovered is a lot of work, brain work. You don't just sit down and slap it on there, and a lot of times I'll be worn out at the end of the day just from trying to solve color or whatever. And and when I was done, I still wasn't what I wanted. So I've had to embrace the fact that my goals sounds silly, but my goals are to stay alive and to keep my body functioning that can handle stuff like that. So when I made this Stagecoach, and it took me about 2 weeks, and I was having a ball, but when I got done, I was kind of exhausted creatively, and I haven't touched anything since. It's been a month, and I haven't done a thing, but that's okay, because I don't have a deadline, and I don't have a customer waiting for something. So maybe in a couple of weeks I'll see something and I want to make it, and I'll just do it. Those are my goals, just to stay alive, help my wife with her life, her health.
Very nice.
Do you see threats to creativity?
Yeah, I think the threats to creativity is to be someone you're not. There are so many artists that are so good, and you think that you should be able to do that, but you have to accept yourself for who you are and what you can do, not try to mimic someone else. And when it comes to trying to set a course, like a business plan that says, if I do these things, if I do this many paintings, I can get into this gallery. If I do this, I can do that. You can't really depend on that in today's world. There are so many good creators out there. I watched a video this week, quite a few of them, of a guy named Palmer Luckey, and he's kind of the alter ego of Elon Musk. Musk has created space as his platform and cars, and Palmer decided that he wanted to reinvent the military industry. Military industry was focused on 5 contractors that have pretty much monopolized everything for years, and he feels that he was a brilliant guy. He's the one that invented the 3D glasses, and then that he sold that, and now he's inventing incredible AI military equipment. His goal is to be able to put out something that saves lives. We don't have to put 400 soldiers on the land when he invents something that is autonomous and can save lives and accomplish what? And pursue peace. So for him, that's what his whole life is about. But if another person wanted to do that same thing, that's okay, but he's already got a jump on you. So the threat is that you fail to see the landscape, what's out there, what needs to be done, where there's a demand for it, and are you able to do it? Are your skills and your background able to fulfill that?
Any final words of inspiration?
I think the mistake that most people make when they think of their creativity is that they're going to make a living at it. They're going to make a career out of it and be able to support themselves. And that's very difficult. I think the creative part of it should be free from financial concerns, not entirely, but not start out that way. It's going to be a process, and you can be inspired, have fun, create things that you like to do, and if people like it, then there's an opening for making money at it. And then there's the next hurdle, and that is you start making money at it, and then that requires you to invest more into it. We used to make t-shirts, and you make a t-shirt, you get it printed, you print 25 shirts, and it's great and people love you. Then you make the next one, you've got to make 100 shirts, and you scramble. Then all of a sudden you realize you need the next bigger screen printer, so you invest $2,000 in that. Then you got to scramble to make that pay, and then you got to hire some people to run it, and it just becomes this albatross real fast. So you've got to be prepared to balance creativity with commercial entities, and that I think probably kills more creativity than anything for people. And if they can make it work, it takes a business head and an artistic head to do it. I was shocked one time when I learned that I tested more in mechanical reasoning than I did in creativity or in art. And I think that's why I understood that I could make clocks and other other things. My job at the college where I was building, I built 12 buildings, and I didn't do it, but I was administrator over it. And it was because I understood the mechanical reasoning of everything, all the parts that had to fit together. So that to me was a real benefit to have those two skills. And I think if a person identifies their own skills and then adapts to what works for them, what product they can produce, that's the key.